The following review was written on May 8, 2021, as such dates and times correspond to that. Rebellion has gone down like Marmite, its first half hour being viewed as the most glorious fan service any series could ask for, and its closing 15 minutes being seen as the worst case scenario, spurred by an executive decision to keep the franchise pumping out media for as long as money can be made off its back. I first watched Rebellion some years ago, and after hearing about a fourth film's announcement a mere 8 years later, I decided to watch the recap films for the first time, and Rebellion, again, to reacquaint myself with this modern classic. I've watched and read much analysis of the show and film in those intervening years, and I feel my interpretation of the whole affair varies slightly. Allow me to give a short spoiler-free section rundown of the film's more objective values, and then we'll dive into that twist. A spoiler warning will be given when appropriate. Like the TV show and recaps before it, what we have on display in Rebellion is some of the finest animation and art design the medium of anime has to offer, with Studio Shaft once again bypassing any expectations to provide us with the most beautiful sights contrasted with the most grim dark apparitions. It's truly wonderful, and there is of course a return to the abstract when the witches and nightmares are involved. There is nothing more you can ask for from an art standpoint, and of course it gets top marks in that regard. Furthermore, the show's fight scenes do the impossible and manage to go further than the TV show's already brilliant fights in terms of scale, animation, and simple awe factor. It should suffice to say the animation is great. The music does much the same, with its whimsical winds, instruments, solos, to its heavier tracks which seems to instill loneliness in the viewer, and a welcome return of the more traditional anime OP songs like Misatero. The soundscape is once more unique and breathtaking, and one can quite happily listen to it all by itself. Like the art, it's another top showing of industry talent, and one that I just can't help but gush about. The story and characters are interesting. We'll go into a more detailed post past the spoiler tag, but it should be said that the film's dialogue isn't quite as tight as the TV show. And while that had a decent amount of exposition, the film has even more. In its defense, the amazing art compensates to keep the scenes interesting, but a return to the more quippy dialogue would be appreciated. Aside from that, it's what you'd expect. The mystery that forms the crux of most of the plot is simple enough to guess early on, if you have an inquiring mind, but still a satisfying one to follow. And really, the characters are far more important here than the plot is. As for said characters, it would be fair to say they're a little less fulfilling than their TV show counterparts, thanks in large part to mostly having already gone through their representative arcs. We know Mami was lonely and kind. We knew Sakura needed to get over her violin boy, and Kyoko needed to have her hope restored. Due to this, most of the characters don't have much to do in terms of personal growth. That isn't a big deal, as it probably might have been, because in all actuality, this is Homura's story. I mean, it has been since episode 1, but more so now than ever before. To conclude this fairly short spoiler-free segment, this film has its faults, and is a departure in some senses from its original source counterpart, but as a piece of media, it's an incredibly enjoyable visual extravaganza. The long run time feels exceptionally well paced. It's over before you know it in the best way possible. The film makes you feel alongside its characters' emotions, and the blatant fan service can't help but warm your heart some, when you've grown to care so much about these stories and characters. The music is a home run, and the whole package is one of brilliance. Despite my grievances with this film, it's a must-watch for anyone who appreciates art at its finest, not to mention anime fans. Spoilers ahead. First, let's clear something up. Those who believe the first half an hour is fan service are completely wrong. Truth is, almost this entire film is fan service. From Kyoko and Homura teaming up again, to the fight we were promised in episode 3 of the anime between Homura and Mami, to Madoka and Homura just being able to see each other again. It's all fan service. Homura turning into a witch too is far more akin to classic magical girl anime than you might think. The loner character temporarily falling to the baddies team, till eventually being rescued by the good guys, is something that we should all be familiar with. Even people who grew up with the likes of Power Rangers should know that trope. This brings me to my first point. I love the idea of a happy ending. Allow me to elaborate. Throughout the original run, I often thought it would be nice for someone else to write the story of this nature, with a rigid magic system and an amazing fight choreography, but with a happier tone. Unfortunately, ever since this, we've seemingly only had knockoff versions that are somehow darker, or edgier at least, in tone than Madoka itself. If you go back in time, you've got the likes of lyrical magical girl Nanoha, which sort of fills that role, but not since. However, none of this is to say that I wanted Madoka to be that happier anime. No, on the contrary, I had no problem when watching the original show with having this be the bad ending. What I thought might be nice was a different anime to be the good ending, like Shuffle is to School Days. So then, what does that make Rebellion? Ignoring its ending, it's an hour and 35 odd minutes, feature length in itself, of a happy ending. We get the half an hour of being a normal magical girl show, then we get the climactic fight against Homura's witch, ending in her release. Remember when Kyoko tried this? It ended in her and Sayaka dying brutally. Sure, they found a sort of peace, but it was bittersweet. The thing is, while I love seeing this happy ending, Sayaka and Kyoko getting to be slightly gay best friends is no doubt the best coupling ever. I'd have rather it not be from Madoka, or enclosed within an alternate universe OVA, which is one of my biggest issues with this movie. It's a continuation of a finished story. Let's talk more on that point. A hollow victory. I love the world of Madoka Magica. It's one of those anime worlds I feel I could happily sit through a lifetime of episodes watching. It's an enchanting place with its dark tone, fixed magic system, and tragic truths. Combined with its godly production, the 12 short episodes of the show almost always felt a little open. When you finish it, it feels contradictory. Everything's been amazingly wrapped up with a neat little bow, and yet it feels almost as though there's still more to be said. It's a fascinating feeling of melancholy. Most shows with an epilogue feel more finished, yet Madoka's epilogue feels bittersweet. Sure, Madoka stopped the existence of witches, but yet the magical girls are still doomed to a fate of horrible fighting. Additionally, her and Homura are, in a physical sense at least, still apart. Yet with all that said, I don't think that makes it a bad ending. No, indeed, that bittersweet feeling is to me completely intentional, just like how we as the audience yearn to click on a non-existent 13th episode and beyond. Homura longs for the day she'll finally be reunited with Madoka once and for all. It's a beautiful ending in a tragic Shakespearean way, and the most fitting ending a show as unique as this could have. So while I wanted more, I knew it could never outdo what it had done prior. And I still feel that, for all that Rebellion is a cinematic masterpiece, for me at least, it doesn't surpass the simple tragedy of the TV show and recap films. So then, with this conflict of interest, do I love or hate Rebellion? Is it just a tacked-on cash grab continuation, or a premeditated conclusion that was always coming? The answer lies in a twofold statement. Rebellion is both a narrative disaster and a cinematic masterpiece, completely in keeping with its source material in both cases, because it's Madoka. Let's again make sure we're on the same level. Those who suggest Homura was always evil or a psychopath are just wrong, plainly and simply. This isn't me trying to be rude. There's some great essays trying to argue this point, but it's blatantly a misread. No, Homura is neither a psychopath nor a sociopath or any other path. She's just a kind girl. She herself sums it up best during the film when internally addressing Mommy, saying that she was always the kindest of them, and that it was always the hardest thing to have to break her heart with the truth. It's not really Mommy she's addressing here, it's herself. What makes all of Madoka's characters so great is how they feel so human, despite the irony that they literally aren't. My personal favourite is Kyoko. She's a stoic, stubborn anti-hero who left behind helping people long ago. Yet in reality, she's maybe the most altruistic of the whole group, eventually dying just in the vain hopes of bringing Sayaka back, even though she's only known her for a few days or weeks. She doesn't do it because of selfishness, but because she realises that Sayaka made her remember the noble stories she used to love. Sayaka is literally dressed as a heroic knight of old, like that of a fairy tale, and that anyone who could bring such hope back into her life deserves to live. In stark contrast, Mommy's loneliness leads her to be, in reality, far less kind than we might think. After all, she selfishly leads Sayaka and Madoka into being magical girls because she can't live with the isolation anymore. It's these deep-rooted human motivations that make the show so brilliant, and to insinuate Homura is any different is to do the show and its characters a huge miscarriage of justice. Homura is fundamentally the show's weakest and strongest character at once. She's too weak to let go of Madoka in either the original timeline or any other, including the Lore of Psycho's third movie timeline. Contrastingly, she's incredibly strong in her pursuit of changing the outcome. Her determination and staying power are incredibly admirable, and it's this that makes her and all the other characters so compelling in the first place. Homura is, as is point blank told to us in the original show, not really so stoic, but is rather putting on a brave face. Gen Urobuchi, the writer, has suggested she's done the loop upwards of 100 times, though he admitted that might not be a canon number. She's therefore mentally in the region of approximately 20 years old. All that is not to suggest she's gone insane, though that would be understandable, but rather her devotion to Madoka is of a practical nature. Her pragmatism has led her to prioritise Madoka, but that does not mean she doesn't care for the others. In the TV show, she tries to save Mommy, tries to sway Sayaka away from being a magical girl, and even stops the fight between her and Kyoko. She even attempted to team up with Kyoko, and then saves her in the first Sayaka witch fight. Is there any element of utilitarianism to all this? Yes. The more of them she can keep alive, the better for her fight against Walpurga Snock Knight, and her endeavour to save Madoka, but that doesn't mean she's thoughtless towards them. Her seeming lack of emotions to their deaths in the later timelines is indicative of the mask she's wearing to cope with her elongated 14-year-old life. There's a great subtlety in the pain in her face, and particularly her mouth conveys the true sadness she feels each time the girls fall and die. The definitive proof is her dream labyrinth. Her ideal world is not just her and Madoka living happily ever after, but instead is one where all 5 of them get to live their happy school lives together and fight fun battles together. The fact is, the other 3 girls are her best friends in the whole world, but Madoka is the one that she loves. Further proof comes after the twist. She says she doesn't know why Sayaka and the others got swept into the new world, but this is clearly a lie based on her character and her facial expressions when the other girls aren't looking. They got brought along because she wanted to save them one last time. Madoka is her top priority, but in the end, Homura is far too kind to ever truly let go of the others forever. After realizing she's a witch early in the film, she rings Kyoko. There's no real purpose or benefit to this phone call, making it completely sentimental. Additionally, she has total, complete faith in Mami and Kyoko to kill her, or more accurately, to set her witch form free, to save her. 100 loops, and the trio of magical girls are in truth the only other people aside from Madoka who she's actually interacted with and spent time alongside. She has no other friends, no family, and there's no love lost between her and Kyubei, so of course she cares about the rest of the girls. She's not a psychopath. Not even a villain, really. That twist ending. So where does that leave us with the twist ending? Like as I said in my earlier statement, it actually works completely. Of course Homura would do everything in her power to bring Madoka back. Is her plan contrived? Definitely. It borders on silly at times. But it's completely what she'd do. The girl who refused to let Madoka Kaname die is surely not going to let her be a lonely space goddess for the rest of time. It's highly clear from her tearful breakdown in front of Madoka and the rest of her expressions that the new demon Homura is little more than another front, just like she's always had. Homura Akemi has always been about putting up facades, masks and fake feelings. Furthermore, narratively, this is how Madoka has always functioned. Episode 3 killed Mami, Kyoko fails to bring back Sayaka, and Homura never truly gets to be reunited with Madoka. It's bittersweet. The show was advertised as an innocent magical girls show, and while you realise it isn't as early as episode 1 if you're really looking, it's always been about defying expectations and punching you right in the face of reality. If this film ended with the girls saving Homura from being a witch, then it would be completely wrong and out of character for the show itself. The conclusion is a simple one. I hate that Madoka Magica's story continued. I'd been fine with non-canon or alternate universe OVA storytelling. Heck, I think I would have adored that. But at the same time, this film is amazing. It is objectively, and yes, I know everyone hates that word, one of the finest pieces of art and anime ever. It's completely in character, wonderfully told and paced, has a score to die for, and some of the best fight scenes in all of anime, nay, literature. But I still can't shake the feeling that it just shouldn't exist. 8 years on, and maybe the 4th film can rectify these lingering feelings and act as a final resolution, but at the same time would I want that? If it doesn't end in a bittersweet way, will it really still be Madoka Magica? I guess only time will tell. I'll end this with an anecdote. My brother can be quite the acute sounding board for my thoughts on anime and other media. He hates this film, and when I put forth my interpretation to him that this film could never have ended in any other way, he said as such, and much like how people hate Rickroll, I hate it. And maybe that's the point. I love this film, but I hate its existence. And maybe that's exactly what Gen wanted us to feel. Whatever the case may be, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed.